Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really plunging into a pretty intense personal drama. It's playing out across continents, involves a former world leader who's currently in prison.
And his family, specifically his sons, who are thousands of miles away. It's this desperate situation, isn't it? They're fighting for his freedom, but also, frankly, his safety.
Exactly, and it really puts things like human rights, the rule of law, under a microscope.
It absolutely does. From, an analytical standpoint, the human and political challenges here are immense. Their struggle, their fight to be heard, it shines a light on these fundamental questions about justice and democracy on an international scale. It's personal pain meeting, big geopolitical issues.
Right, so our mission here is to unpack this extraordinary situation surrounding Imran Khan. A former prime minister of Pakistan, nearly 2 years imprisoned, really harsh conditions reported, and his sons trying relentlessly to get global attention, trying to get him released.
And the core of what we're looking at today comes from some really compelling interview excerpts with his sons, Suleiman and Qasim. They're the ones speaking out.
Yeah, and just to be clear, up front, we'll be laying out the perspectives from the material we have, presenting it impartially so you, the listener, can really form your own view. Okay, let's start with the human side of this because it really does hit home. The emotional toll on Imran Khan's sons, Suleiman, who's 28, and Qasim, who's 26. They call it brutal. Desperate.
And just the sheer length of separation.
All right.
They haven't seen their father since, November 2022? That's almost 3 years.
And haven't even spoken to him in 4 months, since March?
That duration alone, it tells you something. But what's really striking and quite concerning is how restricted the communication has become. I mean, there were supposed to be these court-mandated weekly calls.
Right, weekly calls, but that didn't happen.
No, they said they often only spoke maybe once every 2 or 3 months. And even then, the way it was handled, getting a message at like 2 a.m. for a 9 a.m. call, it's almost designed to be missed.
Wow, so easily missed.
Very easily. And worse, since they last spoke out in that interview, they say contact has been completely cut off, zero communication.
Which sounds deliberate.
Well, this kind of isolation, it's a known tactic in these sorts of political detentions. It's about psychological pressure, controlling information, undermining their support system, their legal defense. It fits a pattern, unfortunately.
And the actual prison conditions they describe, I mean, just listening to it sounds harrowing. Talk about that from a human rights angle. What norms are potentially being violated here?
Well, the reports are deeply concerning. He's allegedly in a very small cell, 22 hours a day, only out for 2 hours.
2 hours. And his access to things, books, they said, were his only solace.
Exactly. That access, severely restricted. Access to lawyers, his own doctor, even family members. That isolation again.
So these conditions, if true, what international standards are we talking about?
We're looking at potential violations of fundamental standards, like the UN Standard Minimum Rules for the treatment of prisoners, the Mandela Rules. They cover basics: hygiene, medical care, legal access, contact with the outside world.
And the hygiene.
Yeah.
They mentioned something specific about the water.
Yes, that he's washing in water that's visibly murky, discolored, that points to a serious disregard for basic dignity and health.
And the health risks associated with that.
They're significant. The Sons pointed out that 10 people have apparently died of hepatitis C in that specific prison, linked to things like uncleaned razors.
That's alarming.
Very. Especially considering Khan's situation. He's in his 70s. He was shot not long ago, reportedly losing a lot of weight. And then add things like no air conditioning or fan in blazing heat. It creates major health concerns.
And they even use the phrase torture tactics, mentioning the power and lights being cut off in his cell for 10 days straight.
Yes, if that's substantiated, it absolutely constitutes cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. That's strictly prohibited under international law. Families in these situations typically try to fight back through domestic courts, appeals to human rights groups, and seeking international pressure. It's an uphill battle.
It's just, harrowing to think about. But let's pull back a bit to understand the context. How did Imran Khan even get here? We need to understand the political backdrop. Most people outside Pakistan probably know him first as a cricket legend.
Right, and that's crucial. His background is key. He was this celebrated cricketer, captained Pakistan to win the World Cup in '92. Huge national hero. Also known for philanthropy, like building the country's first cancer hospital.
His sons described him as incredibly kind-hearted, generous.
Yes, and they say his move into politics wasn't about power for its own sake. They frame it as driven by a sort of spiritual conviction, a feeling of responsibility.
Responsibility to do what?
To stand up against the entire status quo, as they put it. to fight the corruption he felt had plagued Pakistan forever, run by these entrenched elites.
So fighting corruption was his core mission.
That was the message, and it really resonated with a lot of Pakistanis. It's a big part of why he became so popular.
Which makes the current situation even more, well, stark. The guy who rose to power promising to fight corruption is now serving 14 years on corruption charges, which he denies, of course.
Vehemently denies them. And his wife, Bushra, she's also serving 7 years. The Sun's report she's gravely unwell, held in conditions they call harsh and degrading, amounting to political persecution.
So how did the Sons counter these specific corruption charges against their father?
Their argument is basically character-based, but also structural. They say anyone who knows him knows he isn't corrupt. And look, if he just wanted to get rich or powerful, he could have easily joined one of the established parties decades ago.
Instead, he started his own party.
Exactly. Took him 20 years, they say, to even be taken seriously. They argue that long, hard road shows his commitment was to his anti-corruption cause, not personal gain.
It's a narrative of political motivation behind the charges.
That's certainly how they present it. And look, legal challenges against prominent opposition figures claiming political motivation, that's not exactly unheard of in many parts of the world, especially where you have these tensions between established powers and populist figures.
Which brings us to the really chilling part, the family's fears for his actual life. This isn't the first time he's faced danger, is it? He survived an assassination attempt before.
Yes, he was shot. And apparently he spoke about having sort of conquered his fear of dying even before getting deep into politics. Like, he knew the risks.
And his sister mentioned a second attempt. Snipers.
That's what she recounted, yeah. Snipers on the rooftops at a judicial complex he was visiting. A very close call. So, given that history...
How real, how immediate do the Sons feel the threat is now, while he's inside?
It sounds incredibly real to them. Their fear is palpable in the interviews. They explicitly say they fear he may die in there.
And they mention specific ways.
Yes, they worry about poisoning. They talk about the many ways they can plot some kind of assassination, especially now that he's isolated, defenseless. It's not just a vague worry. It's rooted in Pakistan's history of political violence.
So the poor conditions, the lack of medical access, just adds to that fear.
It amplifies it enormously. It creates this constant state of anxiety for the family, a real sense of dread.
It's heartbreaking to hear them talk about that level of fear, but what's also striking is their resilience. How do families even cope in situations like this?
It's remarkable, isn't it? Silliman mentioned how they built a very thick skin over the years, precisely because their father was always confronting dangerous situations.
He even shared a story about when he was a kid.
Yeah, really poignant, saying when he was 9 or 10, he'd constantly beg his dad to just quit politics, choose a safer life.
But he grew to understand.
He said as he got older, he realized his father just wouldn't be happy if he wasn't trying to make that change, fighting that fight. He understood his father's conviction.
That kind of deep understanding seems to be what's driving them now.
Absolutely. Families in these high-stakes political dramas often go through this transformation. There's the initial fear, the desire for safety, totally natural. But often, witnessing that commitment, they develop this shared sense of purpose. That thick skin isn't about being cold, it's about finding the strength to keep fighting despite the fear.
And that fight has now gone global. They're pushing for justice, for awareness, in a very public way, which isn't easy for them, apparently.
No, they describe themselves as quite private people, so undertaking these huge public efforts, it really speaks to their desperation.
What exactly are they doing? What are the steps they're taking?
Well, first they tried the direct route. They wanted to go to Pakistan to see him.
But they couldn't.
They were told explicitly by people in the Pakistani government that they'd be arrested if they came. They also got warnings from family, from inside sources. They applied for visas anyway.
Yeah.
No response, just silence.
So hitting a brick wall there.
Completely. Which seems to have forced them to pivot decisively towards international advocacy, raising the alarm abroad.
Okay, so what does that international effort look like? Where are they focusing?
Well, they recently traveled to the U.S., met with politicians there, trying to get support, trying to get people to advocate for his release.
Anyone specific they appeal to?
They made a point of appealing to former President Donald Trump. They believe Trump has a great relationship with their father and could potentially affect real pressure. They see him as one of the few people who might be able to make a tangible difference.
Any traction there?
Well, Richard Grenell, who is a U.S. ambassador under Trump, has publicly supported their cause, so there's some visibility.
And it's not just appeals to foreign leaders, right? They had a message for figures within Pakistan, too.
Oh, very direct. A message aimed squarely at General Asim Munir, the army chief, who holds significant power in Pakistan.
What was the message?
Essentially, respect democracy, respect the will of Pakistani people, respect the rule of law, give him a proper fair trial, clear demands.
And beyond the U.S., any other countries?
They've also mentioned wanting to speak with senior figures in the UK government, the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy. So it's a broad strategy, trying multiple avenues.
So, beyond just getting their father released, what's the bigger picture they're trying to paint with this campaign? What's the broader goal?
It seems to be twofold. First, it's definitely about raising awareness of what they call human rights violations happening in Pakistan, using their father's case, the alleged torture, the unsanitary conditions, the lack of light, as clear examples.
And the second part?
That's the democratic angle. They keep emphasizing that their father is, in their words, the most popular candidate in Pakistan. They argue that the 250 million people of Pakistan deserve to have their voices heard, their democratic choices respected.
So it connects his personal plight to the broader issue of democracy in Pakistan.
Exactly. It highlights that tension between, let's say, popular support and established political power. Their plea is really quite powerful. They're asking anyone with a platform, politicians, journalists, anyone to speak out, to give some support.
They admit it's hard for them personally.
Yes, but they frame it as a duty that comes with their privilege and because of what their father, they feel, has done for Pakistan.
It's definitely been a sobering deep dive, really lays bare the gravity of Imran Khan's situation, seen through the eyes of his sons, their courage, their desperation. It's quite something.
It really is. You see this intense personal anguish intertwined with these huge principles of justice and democracy.
And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it?
It definitely does. It leaves us with a pretty challenging question, I think. How does a personal family struggle like this, fighting for a loved one against the state apparatus, how does that connect with the bigger questions? Questions about international responsibility for human rights, for democratic principles.
Right. What duty do international bodies or even powerful individual leaders have when they hear these appeals? Appeals for basic rule of law, for human dignity coming from such, vulnerable positions, especially when it involves someone who claims such massive popular support.
That's the question to ponder. What's the responsibility there?